Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Mike Green. I'm one of the owners of 1A Auto. I want to help you save time and money repairing and maintaining your vehicle. I'm going to use my 20+ years experience restoring and repairing cars and trucks like this to show you the correct way to install parts from 1AAuto.com. The right parts installed correctly. That's going to save you time and money. Thank you and enjoy the video.
In this video, we're going to show you water pump replacement on this 2003 F-150. This truck has the 5.4 liter gas V8. This procedure is the same for a lot of Ford trucks and SUVs as well as vans with the 4.6 liter and the 5.4 liter V8 engines. Tools you'll need for this job are a large adjustable wrench, a catch pan, half-inch drive breaker bar or a ratchet with a pipe for leverage, that's to get the serpentine belt off, a belt wrench, a 10mm socket with a ratchet and extension, a hammer, a large flat blade screwdriver, small wire brush, rags or a sponge or paper towels, and 2 or 3 gallons of fresh antifreeze or coolant. And also, as anybody knows on these trucks, if you have a stool, you'll need it to stand on to reach over that big grill. Okay, looking at the engine compartment, right here the fan is attached to a pulley. That is attached to your water pump. So indicators that your water pump is your problem is when your vehicle's running, you'll smell the kind of a sweet smell of coolant. You'll also probably see some steam coming from this area of the engine. And then underneath, okay, you may see some water. Actually, my truck's already leaked it all out, so there's no water underneath here. But you may see some water or green coolant on the ground underneath your truck. And then as you look up at the bottom of the engine, okay, you can see that the front bottom of my engine is damp. It has coolant on it. I'll zoom in here a little bit. Okay, so you can see the coolant right there dripping off the front of the engine. That means that the coolant is leaking out of the water pump. Okay, so what we're actually going to do is right under here, this is my radiator, and this is my drain. So I'm going to use a wrench, put a catch pan underneath, open this up, and drain. You don't have to drain all the coolant out, but you want to drain some of the coolant out of the radiator to bring the level down some. Okay, so now I've tightened up that drain, and I've just positioned my pan underneath the middle of the front of the engine. Okay, now you're going to remove your serpentine belt. So I'm taking a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, inserting it into my tensioner. Okay, and then I'll put a nice big piece of pipe on it. That helps me get leverage. Push clockwise on the tensioner. And then you can slide the belt right off of the alternator and then slowly release back on the tensioner. Okay. Take your ratchet and pipe off, and you can take your belt and just kind of remove it from that side and just pull it right over here. Okay, with the belt out of the way, it's very easy to see right there is your weep hole, so you look for coolant coming up and out of there. And even in this shot it appears to be dry. That's only because my truck was so low on coolant, because the coolant leaked out of the water pump so quickly. You can see how it's stained, a rust-colored stain. That water pump is aluminum, so that rust-colored stain basically indicates some coolant came up out of the cast iron block and deposited some rust. So we can be 100% sure now that the water pump is the problem. Okay, now I need to remove my cooling fan. So I've got a belt wrench. Okay, what you do is you put the belt down and around the pulley. Now you can see here I've got my belt wrench on. I'm using it, I'm actually pressing it against the alternator to hold it in place. Then put my large adjustable wrench down in there and remove the large bolt that holds the fan. once you have that loosened up, then you basically can just kind of spin the fan right off.
Okay, I'm just going to let the fan rest right in there. Now using a 10mm socket with a ratchet, remove the 4 bolts that hold the pulley.
And I'm just going to fast forward this, so you're doing the same thing. Use that belt wrench around the water pump pulley, hold it in place, and then the 10mm socket and ratchet, remove those 4 bolts that hold the pulley in place. Okay, here you can see I just disconnected that upper radiator hose to give you a better view. You don't have to do that, but use a flat blade screwdriver and just pry against the water pump. Keep turning the pulley a few degrees and keep prying until it comes off.
Now your water pump's held on by 4 10mm bolts. You can see 1 and 2. There's a third one here, and then one underneath over here, which you can't really see. I'll get that one underneath first.
And I'm going to fast forward as I remove the 4 bolts that hold the water pump in place. These 4 bolts come out fairly easily once you get them started with a wrench. After a couple turns, they basically come right out with your fingers. Okay, now what you want to do is take a good-sized hammer and basically hit the side of the water pump shaft, and you can see it start to move back and forth. Once you get it, and actually if you look just below the radiator hose, you'll see a little crack opening up. Once you get it to move quite a bit, then use a screwdriver, force it into the crack, and then hit the opposite side. Okay, and then I'll move back and forth between hitting one side and the screwdriver until the pump comes out. Okay, so I'm moving it back and forth, changing position of the screwdriver. You can see the pump comes out, and some more antifreeze will drain out of your engine.
Okay, so taking a nice absorbent sponge and try and just kind of sop up some of the coolant down here. Okay. Wire brush, just carefully, just clean it up a little bit. Okay. And just take your sponge and just kind of wipe out. Make sure you don't leave anything in there. New pump. Got my O-ring installed. I put some penetrating oil on it so it'll slide in nicely. I want to have my weep hole up and pretty much well in place. Okay, start the bolts in.
Okay, I'm going to fast forward here. This is kind of a long process, this part of it. You want to put each bolt in by hand first, and you want to basically push in firmly on the pump and get all the bolts kind of hand tight. You need to make sure that you force your pump in nice and straight. So basically get all the bolts in by hand first, then tighten one of them a few turns, go to the opposite one, tighten that a few turns, one of the other ones, tighten a few turns, opposite one a few turns, until you have all of the bolts basically snug.
Now we're going to tighten these bolts to 19 foot-pounds. I'm going to start with the top one. Okay. I'm going to go to the bottom one.
Okay, I'm going going to fast forward through quite a bit of the reassembly here. Put that pulley back on, start all 4 bolts. When I put it on, I actually put 1 bolt through, get that one started, get the pulley in place, then start the other 3 bolts. Then you can put your belt wrench back on the opposite way. Again, put it against the alternator so it holds it in place, and tighten up the bolts. You want to have them probably about 20 foot-pounds. They don't have to be extremely tight, just on there snug. Don't over tighten them because you don't want to stretch them or break them. Now reinstall the cooling fan. You basically lift it up into place, push it onto the shaft, and just keep turning it slowly until you get it on there. Be careful not to cross thread it. Get into place, then use your large adjustable wrench with the belt wrench and tighten it up. Alright, now take our belt, make sure it's still down around the crankshaft. Okay, take it down and around this pulley here. Okay, and now it's all on there, with the exception of the alternator. A ratchet. Put it in the tensioner. Our pipe. Use a ratchet and pipe. Pull the tensioner over, then put the belt on the alternator. And then release the ratchet. Make sure your belt's all on there. Okay, now we're going to refill the antifreeze. The filter in there. Your minimum cold fill lines right here. Depending on how much you drained your radiator, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 gallons. Make sure it's properly mixed fluid. Okay, so you can see I filled it up. If you really watch close, it is kind of draining down. I'm going to just start up the engine for just a minute and get that fluid to circulate around the truck a little bit. Okay, now I'll get it back up to that minimum line. Go down, we'll drive it around a little bit and then let it cool down, check, and fill as needed. Okay, so now you can see with the truck idling and up to temperature. No leaks underneath, nice and dry. You can see our fluid went down some. We'll shut it off. So we'll shut it off, let it cool off, recheck that fluid, and go from there. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.oneauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.